What's going on, everybody? It's AG here. Today, we're going to take a look at my Big Ten teams that can make the college football playoff this season. We're going to take a look at my list, and then we're going to take a look at the list you guys sent in. We've got about 50 to 100 comments submitted, so we're going to take a look at all those, and we'll discuss them. But join me down in the comment section before we move along. Let me know the Big Ten teams that you think can make the college football playoff this season. And if you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so these are in no particular order, just alphabetically, so these aren't like a ranking of sorts. This is just the 6 teams that I think can make the playoff. Starting off, Iowa. All right, I know their offense sucks. All right, I know that's been established at this point that their offense is pretty iffy, all right, to say the least here. But looking at their toughest games this season, Iowa State, at Ohio State, and Wisconsin. So why do I think they can make the playoff this season? Number one, all right, we know that defense is going to be stout. All right, that's no doubt. Every single year, that's kind of why they end up sneaking into the top 25 by the end of the season, because as bad as their offense is, that defense is stout. That defense is arguably a top 5, arguably the best in the country every season. Offensively, why am I a little more optimistic this year? Not necessarily the offense coordinator change. Yes, that's going to help them somewhat. We get rid of the daddy ball aspect of the OC, but quarterback is the reason I'm fairly optimistic here. Their quarterback is Cade McNamara this season, coming over from Michigan. All right, you may remember him, led Michigan to a Big Ten college football playoff. Was replaced by somebody you might know, all right, JJ McCarthy. So he has kind of proven previously that he can have success not only in the Big Ten, but in college football in general. And thinking back a few years, like I said, he was good there, came over last season, was injured, so he didn't get to play at all last season. There were some rumors he might not make it out in time for this season either, but he is cleared. He is good to go, so that is going to be your quarterback this year. Cade McNamara combined with that offense, as well as the schedule. Look at the schedule here. They play at Ohio State. They avoid Oregon. They avoid Penn State. They avoid Michigan. This schedule is very manageable. You can afford a loss to Ohio State with the college football playoff expansion, to be honest with you. With 12 teams going, if you can not just get destroyed by Ohio State, keep that within probably 20 points. If you can keep that within 20 points, you take care of the rest of your games, beat Iowa State, which should be a top 25 team. If you can get those on your resume, Iowa's going to the college football playoff. All right, next up, Michigan. All right, Michigan is a completely reloaded roster from last year almost. Now, they do bring back some pieces. That defensive line is going to be stout, probably the best defensive line in the country. You got to replace a lot of key pieces. Number one, head coach Jim Harbaugh. He's gone. Sharon Moore kind of showed what he could do in spot duty last year. He beat Ohio State, beat Penn State, but it's a little different in spot duty. Same with like a quarterback. It's different in spot duty than it is being the guy all offseason. So we'll see how he does as the head coach. You got to replace quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. He's gone. How is Alex Orji going to look at quarterback? We know he can run. All right, got a lot of Wildcat package appearances last season, but how is that arm going to look this season? That's kind of going to dictate, I think, how that season goes, is how does Alex Orji do? As good as Alex Orji goes, that's going to make Michigan go. They got to replace Blake Corum at running back. All right, Donovan Edwards is now the guy. He has looked really good when he has gotten some action. All right, think back to the championship. Took 2 of them, I think, to the house against Washington. I think Donovan Edwards is arguably better than Blake Corum, so I don't think they're going to miss a beat there. But you don't have that luxury of having him as a backup now. Defense should be stout for sure. Top 5 defense in the country, I would say. But again, as Alex Orji goes, this team goes this year. But toughest games are, we're going to know pretty early just how good this team is. They play Texas in the non-con. That's going to let the country know about both these teams, frankly. Now, a lot of people are really high on Michigan. I'm not super high. They're in my top 25, but not anywhere near the top 10 or anything. Oregon, that's going to be a tough one. We'll probably talk about Oregon here in a little bit. No spoilers, but how are they going to look, playing week in and week out in the Big Ten? So you do host Oregon. That's going to be to your benefit. Then you travel to the Horseshoe and play Ohio State in the game. All right, that's going to be tough. But Ohio State has not been able to beat Michigan these last few years. Now, it is a roster change. Like I said, these last few years, Michigan has been loaded, kind of building up to that championship. So how will they look this season? We're going to find out soon enough. Ohio State is next up on this list. All right, toughest games at Oregon, at Penn State, Michigan. Going to be really difficult, as talented as they are, to make it through those 3 games unscathed, I would say. At Oregon and at Penn State are going to be tough. And then, like I said, Michigan's had their number. Ohio State, though, has loaded up this roster in the transfer portal. All right, they bring Treyveon Henderson back at running back. Got Ibuka back at receiver. Quarterback-wise, it looks like Will Howard from Kansas State is going to be the guy to replace Kyle McCord. You lose Marvin Harrison Jr., but you also bring in Quinshon Judkins to kind of pair with Treyveon Henderson, so that backfield duo is going to be nasty. Will Howard also kind of offers you some run game, I would say, quarterback-wise. Kind of an underrated rusher, to be honest with you. Defensively, you've got a lot of key pieces back. A lot of NFL first-round draft talent on that defense. You bring in Caleb Stearns from Alabama at safety. That defense is going to be nasty. All right, I said Caleb Stearns, Caleb Downs. That defense is going to be nasty. All right, that offense should be improved, I think. Now, Ryan Day, is this the year he's got to win it all or he gets fired? I don't know. All right, now, they should be a shoo-in for the playoff every season with playoff expansion, but the real question mark is, can they win the Big Ten this season? You've got basically these three teams. The other team that are listed are the teams vying for the Big Ten championship with you, I would say. This is arguably the most talented roster in the country. If he can't beat Michigan with this roster and with what Michigan lost, I don't know if it's ever going to happen. All right, next up, Oregon. Coming over from the Pac-12. Are they going to be able to compete with the Big Ten week in and week out? Definitely a tougher conference than the Pac-12, and that's kind of been my one skepticism about Oregon. Yes, they've been really good, but playing these tough teams week in and week out is a completely different thing from playing them 1 week at the beginning of the year, 1 week at the end of the year. Because there's multiple teams in the Big Ten that can beat you. And they play two of them for sure, Ohio State and at Michigan, as well as at Wisconsin. That's no gimme. Now, Oregon, I think they have uploaded their roster, and I said uploaded. They have improved their roster, excuse me. All right, they've improved their roster through the transfer portal. You bring in Dillon Gabriel at quarterback from Oklahoma. I would argue he might even put up better numbers than Bo Nix this year, which is asking a lot, I realize, but Dillon Gabriel's, he's legit. I think he's the Heisman frontrunner right now. But their offense is always explosive. The real question marks are on the defense, and when they get to these tougher teams, can they compete up front? Can they compete defensively? They have stacked this defense through the transfer portal, have brought in a ton of transfers that should be able to help them right away. In particular, in the secondary, they have loaded up, and I think this is one of the best Oregon teams we've seen in the last few years, besides those runs way back when. But of recent memory, like Dan Lanning, as far as him being the head coach is concerned, this is his most talented team, I think. All right, next up, Penn State. Toughest games at USC, at Wisconsin, Ohio State. All right, now they've kind of been on the outskirts the past few seasons. I think they benefit the most from college football playoff expansion, definitely in the Big Ten, but probably in the entire country. Because, you think back a couple years ago, they were probably the fifth best team in the country, and Ohio State and Michigan made the playoff, and Penn State got left out. But with playoff expansion, 12 teams, Penn State should be able to get in more frequently than not. Now, a lot of people are pushing for, hey, if James Franklin doesn't get it done this year, he needs to be fired. I think he's done an okay job there. Not meeting their expectations, obviously, but he's lost to Ohio State and Michigan, and they've been pretty solid, I would say, to say the least, these last few years. But Penn State's roster is pretty stacked. This defense, you could argue, is the best in the country. Definitely a top 5 defense, I would say. You got Drew Aller back at quarterback. All right. How is he going to do this season? He should be improved. Already started enough games now. They bring in some key transfers, all right, on offense and defense. I think Penn State should be a top 5 team this year. And a lot of people aren't fans of Penn State. They don't think they're going to be good this year. I think they are, though. But toughest games at USC, at Wisconsin, Ohio State, so you avoid Oregon and you avoid Michigan. That's definitely going to go to their benefit. And with playoff expansion, like I said, you can probably lose 2 games. They also play West Virginia in the non-con, but I was mainly trying to include conference games here. That West Virginia game should tell a bunch, though, because West Virginia should be a top 25 team and probably is better than USC or Wisconsin, you could argue. But can they beat Ohio State? I don't know about that, but I think they can definitely compete with them. They competed with them last year, them and Michigan. They kept it within 10 points, I think. So Penn State should be good this season as well. All right, this might be the last team on this list. I can't remember how many we've talked about already. Let's see, Iowa, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State. All right, so yeah, that's the last team. My bad. I lost count here. Rutgers. Okay, so this is probably the one you're scratching your head at the most on this list. Now, before you go crazy, look at their toughest games here. All right, go look at their schedule. Without even talking about the team, this schedule alone is a reason to have a chance at the college football playoff. They avoid the top 5 teams in the conference. They don't play anybody I've talked about so far. So Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon, Iowa, they don't play any of those teams. Their toughest games are at Nebraska, Wisconsin, and at USC, which are obviously to this point not on this list. So Rutgers, I think, have a chance to make the college football playoff, let alone from the schedule. But their roster, they return Kyle Monunga at running back. He is the Big Ten leading rusher last season. He put up some seriously good numbers, and I think he's going to again. They return the majority of their roster. They have improved in some pieces through the transfer portal. So this team is ready to go. They're locked and loaded, I think, for this upcoming season. And call me crazy, but I think Rutgers might make the college football playoff this season. They're definitely probably going to make the Big Ten championship because they're going to be undefeated. They also play Virginia Tech in the non-con, but they handled Virginia Tech last year. They beat them by about 20. So I think Rutgers is legit, and I think I know it sounds insane, they have a serious shot at making the college football playoff. All right, so that is my list. All right, my 6 teams. Now we're going to look at your guys' list. If you haven't yet, join me down in the comment section. What do you think are the Big Ten teams that can make the college football playoff? So let me zoom in here real quick, and we'll get started on your guys' comments you submitted. And if you are new here, all right, you can submit these through community comments. You can send them to my email. You can shoot me a DM on Twitter or respond to my post on Twitter. You can talk about it in the Discord chat. That link is in my on my page. You can comment on my Bleacher Report post. Any of those will get you on here. So let's go ahead and start. I asked you guys, who are the Big Ten teams that you think can make the playoff? Let me get a drink, then we'll get started. All right, so Nicholas says the Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and maybe Michigan. These are probably going to be the 4 most common names mentioned through your guys' comments, but hard to disagree with any of those. I mean, those are definitely, I would say, the top teams. Next up, Self says Ohio State, and some people didn't submit all of their teams. They thought they were just throwing out some names like, hey, I think they can make it this year, you know. But yeah, hard to disagree with Ohio State. I think Ohio State's in. They're definitely one of the 2 best teams, I would say, right now in the country. I'd say them or Georgia is definitely up there. All right, Alf, we will have 3, talking about the Big Ten. He says Michigan and Ohio State are going, and whoever among Oregon, Washington, Penn State, and maybe Iowa or Wisconsin finishes 3rd, best resume. So Alf says 3 teams are going, Michigan and Ohio State for sure, and then whoever out of all those teams has the 3rd best resume in the end will go. So some different names thrown in there, you know, Washington, Iowa, Wisconsin. And Wisconsin was probably on my honorable mentions. Among some other teams, you know, I would throw USC in there probably, Nebraska, even Maryland. I just didn't think they quite had a favorable enough schedule or a talented enough team to make it just yet. Matthew, realistically, Ohio State and Oregon. Hard to disagree with those two. Those two are going to be probably the most common answers. All right, Buck. So this is one where I was talking about he threw out some other teams besides the obvious ones. Northwestern, Rutgers, and Maryland. So we touched on Rutgers earlier. I think they can make it. Northwestern, before we talk about them this year, really good year last season. David Braun did a really good job last year. Probably the most underrated 8-5 season or unheralded 8-5 season out of everybody last year. And then Maryland, Mike Locksley does a heck of a job, man. He's always got them in that 8-win range and without talent. So I think he's probably one of, if not the most underrated coach in the nation. Mike says Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. So how about Minnesota getting some love here? PJ Fleck rowed the boat. A lot of people have called for his job at Minnesota, actually. I don't think they can make the playoff this season. Nobody really had an easy enough schedule besides Rutgers to kind of sneak into that conversation, you know. But he's actually done a really good job at Minnesota talking to me about PJ Fleck. I mean, I think he has their most wins ever in a season, since the last 100 years. So, I mean, what are the expectations really at Minnesota? All right, Chungus Among Us. Nebraska, because we're going 11-1. So there's some Nebraska love, and there will be a little bit more on the list. Matt Rhule, he's kind of proven he can turn around programs. I don't think it's going to happen just yet at Nebraska because I think there's just too many other teams in the conference that are more talented than them, that are better. But give him a couple years, and I think Nebraska will be a consistent top 25 team, because he did it at Baylor previously. All right, here we go. As of right now, any of Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Iowa are the ones I think can make the field of 12 today. I need to see more from Michigan and Nebraska first. Beyond those 6 teams, I don't see anyone else possibly being a playoff team this year, and that's Brian. So he says he needs to see a little more from Michigan and Nebraska before he can get on the hype train. Michigan, like I said, we'll see after Texas. We'll know all about them. We need to know probably. And then Nebraska, we're going to have to see with the quarterback coming in. The 5-star, was it Dylan, is that his name? If he can hit right off the bat, that's going to take this roster even more. All right, Joey, I lean Iowa over Michigan. That team is one huge question mark. All right, so Iowa getting a lot of love, surprisingly. You don't see Iowa getting too much love besides from me, usually on this channel, but Iowa getting a lot of love here. I like it. And another Michigan question mark. That seems to be a common theme so far. All right, I'd pick Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. I need to see what those former Pac-12 teams are going to do on the Big Ten defensively first. I agree with that. None of them had any damn defense last season, so that's coming from dirty. All right, so I agree with him there. I kind of need to see some more from the Pac-12 teams before I can fully get on board. As good as Oregon is this year, I'm a known Oregon skeptic, and I say they are a playoff team this year, but still, how good are they? What is their ceiling? Are they going to drop a game they shouldn't, in the Big Ten? Because, again, the Big Ten is a completely different animal from the Pac-12. I realize Washington has been good, but week in and week out, you're playing some tough competition. Because, you get down to Wisconsin, Nebraska, those teams can play. That's not just a gimme. All right, here we go. Ohio State and Oregon. Michigan lost everyone. Penn State always underperforms. Iowa has an unproven offense, and Wisconsin is 2 years away. That's coming from Bucky. All right, so he has some good points here and some specific stuff as well. So Wisconsin 2 years away. I think with Luke Fickell, he'll definitely get them on track. Iowa unproven offense. That's kind of what I was saying. They have some question marks. That defense is good. Offense, who knows? Penn State always underperforms. I agree, but with playoff expansion, I think they should be a shoo-in for the playoff, but we'll find out. All right. Oh, okay. Percentages. I like it. All right. Matthew says Ohio State, 95%. Oregon, 90% chance of making the college football playoff. Penn State, 50%. Michigan, 45%. Iowa, 20%. Wisconsin, 10%. USC, 10%. And Minnesota, 0.001%. Surprisingly, Minnesota getting a lot of mention on here so far. I know it's only been a couple, but that's more than I was expecting. USC, I would not be shocked if they somehow get into the playoff or, get in that conversation by the end. Riley has improved that defense through the portal a little bit. Miller Moss looked okay at quarterback. And last year, they really didn't lose to anybody bad. And go back a couple years ago, they were a quarter away from making the playoffs. So I think Lincoln Riley is a good enough coach to get them into the conversation, and their schedule is somewhat favorable. I think they play LSU week 1, so we should know a lot about them pretty quick. All right, Kev says Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, and Penn State. Hard to argue with those 4. I think, first off, I forgot to mention this. I think really the Big Ten probably will get 4 teams in, probably. Trying to think how many. So right now I've got them and the SEC making up almost 75% of the field. You've got 5 teams going. All right, one of those is a Big Ten team. So Big Ten winner, SEC winner, Big 12 winner, ACC winner, and then that G5, whoever's ranked the highest. So that's 5 teams, 7 spots left. And with that, you probably, you could easily see a conversation where, of those 7 spots remaining, 3 go to the SEC or the Big Ten, and 4 go to the SEC or Big Ten. So that's not out of the realm of possibility where every other conference only gets 1 team in. You could make an argument that the ACC or the Big 12 gets 2 teams in, but most likely, I think I had it with SEC getting 5 teams in, and that meaning, the Big Ten probably gets 4 in. It's not insane to think. So yeah, Kevin, I don't disagree with you there. I don't know if Michigan will make it, but they do have a shot. All right, Moist, nice name. Says programs with a playoff ceiling: Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, USC, Iowa, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. All right, so Nebraska and Wisconsin getting some mention here, as well as USC. All right, no mention of Michigan here. All right, Moist, I like it. Evan says, okay, Wisconsin and Ohio State. So Wisconsin getting some love here. They do play Alabama in the non-con. So we'll see on Wisconsin. They were okay last year. I think like 7 wins last year. But Luke Fickell is a good head coach. He took Cincinnati to the freaking playoff for crying out loud. So Tyler Van Dyke coming over from Miami at quarterback, that should definitely improve their offense instantly, I think. And they also had some other nice portal pieces. All right, Matt says Oregon and Ohio State, maybe Penn State if they can actually win a big game. Yeah, so that's kind of been the common criticism of Penn State when going through this list, is that they just haven't done it yet. We think they could be in the playoff, but they haven't proved it just yet. Hard to know. Lots of roster turnover, maybe just Oregon and Ohio State realistically. All right, speaking of Penn State, after watching for the last few decades, Penn State just doesn't have it in them, regardless of roster that's coming from M. So yeah, same like what a lot of people are saying. Penn State has it, but they just haven't done it. TD says, obviously Michigan State, I'm delusional. All right, so Michigan State getting some love here. I mean, they've got Oregon State's coach coming over, so I mean, I think you'll get them more towards 500-ish territory, but year one, yeah, I'm with you. You're probably a little delusional there, TD. All right, I'm going to assume from the last part, this is probably an Oregon fan. Oregon and Ohio State, maybe Michigan. You know what's coming. That's coming from Grant. All right, he's definitely an Oregon fan, giving Oregon some love here. They are known in my comment section to really give Oregon a lot of love. Understandably so. I mean, they're always fairly good, but like I said, I'm obviously a skeptic usually. All right, we got a long one here. Ohio State, Oregon. And if you look at Penn State's schedule and you think that a 2-loss Big Ten team gets in, then them too. I think they're not great so long as Franklin is there, talking about their coach. But their schedule really gives them 2 games where they probably aren't the favorite, and that's coming from Gee. Sorry if I said your name wrong. Yeah, I agree. So I think there's 2 games where they shouldn't be the favorite, and like I've touched on with going to 12 teams, you can lose 2 games. And depending on who those 2 teams are, if they're both in the playoff, you're probably still getting in. You're probably still a top 10 team. All right, Richard, with 12 teams, Ohio State, SHU, or I'm assuming that's talking about Oregon, and then UM, Michigan. So Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan, 3 common ones. Dirk says Oregon, Dirk Nowitzki. All right, it's going to be a crapshoot. Looking at Big 10, SEC, Big 12 scheduling grids, possibly even top-seeded teams have 2 losses. That's coming from Carlos. So, yeah, that's kind of what I was just talking about, that 2 losses, you're really not in any jeopardy. You're still getting in most likely if you have 2 losses. You could probably even sneak in at the 11th spot with 3 losses, but 2 losses is, after that, though, you're going to be sweating. All right, Ohio State and Oregon are the top contenders, no doubt. Will probably be those 2, Penn State and maybe Michigan or Washington, if we can both put up a good season. Okay, so he's throwing Washington in there. Now, Washington was good last season, obviously, made the national championship, but they lost all their roster, lost their coaching staff, are going to Alabama. They bring in Jedd Fisch from Arizona. And if he could have got Arizona's guys to come with him, I might have been a little more lenient, but that roster just has so many question marks, I don't think it can happen right away at Washington. All right, here we go. Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Washington, again, and USC are all capable of putting a season together and beating the top 12. Likely it will only be Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Washington or Michigan. So again, he's got 4 teams here. I think 4 teams do get in, but who is that 4th team going to be is the real question mark. I think those first 3, I agree with, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. That 4th one, I don't know. There's probably like 5 teams, like I was saying, that you could get in there. But Washington starting to get some love here. Sammy says, who you rocking with in college football 25? Sammy likes to throw in some questions that are random every time somehow on here. I don't really know how they sneak through the firewall, considering I'm the editor of these. I don't know how these get in here. But Sammy, who am I rocking with in college football 25? So yeah, releases next Monday. I will be playing. Now, I don't know if I'm going to stream it or not. That's a question mark. What do you guys think? Should I stream some College Football 25 or not? I'm going to probably just do like offline Dynasty stuff as the plan, but yeah, I can stream it if y'all want to watch it. But I don't know. What do you think? Let me know down in the comment section. Sammy, usually in Dynasty mode, my plan is like I'll start at a small school, like think like Sam Houston, for example, Sam Houston State. I'll start there as like an offense coordinator, defense coordinator, and then work my way up the reins. That's probably the plan at first that's probably the plan right now. I actually start as an OC at like Sam Houston State or whatever, or some small school like that, Kennesaw State, whatever, and then work your way up after that, whether it's taking a small school head coaching gig or taking a, Big 12 OC job, something like that. That's probably the plan, so we'll see. But yeah, I can't wait, man. Next Monday, coming soon. All right, Dennis says Ohio State for sure, Oregon and Michigan with Penn State a possibility. All right, so yeah, I agree. That seems to be the four most common names here. Michigan, I'm a little more iffy on. I just need to see more from Alex Orji. But if Alex Orji can hit, I think that roster is talented enough to make another run. John says, I think Penn State has a good shot this year. Okay, Penn State getting a lot of love here. Jameson, I think Oregon makes the playoffs. I don't disagree with either one of these guys. I think Penn State and Oregon are in. Chris, Oregon, Ohio State, maybe Michigan. So those seem to be obviously the most common two. I think they're, in most people's preseason top three. Oregon and Ohio State are both in there. Peter says USC. All right, Pete Carroll, I don't know. USC, all right. So like I said on them, I think they are talented enough to somehow sneak in, but they play Notre Dame as well. I forgot about that then. They play Notre Dame and LSU out of conference, so we'll see. Jay says the Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, and maybe USC. I'm surprised USC has gotten as much love as they are because usually a lot of people are critical of Lincoln Riley, and understandably so. I mean, I thought they underperformed the past couple of years, but I think he has a proven track record enough with, multiple double-digit win seasons that he's shown he can win. Sorry, guys, I'm getting thirsty here. All right, J.E. says, would like to see the Terps as a Maryland native. All right, Maryland, yeah, Mike Locksley, hey, he's done a heck of a job in Maryland. I know he doesn't get a lot of love, but, consistently has them like in that 8-win range with far less talented teams than the teams they were beating. If their schedule would have been, like if they would have had like Maryland's schedule, I could have seen them sneaking in, but it just didn't play out good enough. Or Rutgers, I said Maryland. All right, here we go. Ohio State and Oregon will for sure. Other teams are based on the rest of the college football landscape. I think there's a chance Penn State ends up being a 2-loss team and making it in 10-12. Michigan just won't have the replacements to be a playoff team. So the same two suspects, then Penn State, he says, getting in with 2 losses possibly, and Michigan won't get it done. That's coming from Damon. Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I think Penn State probably loses 2 games, and gets in. And Michigan, like I said, it's going to depend. They've done some okay replacement-wise everywhere, but quarterback is the big question mark for me. All right, Duck says Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, maybe Wisconsin or Michigan. Too many? LOL. I'm glad Wisconsin's getting thrown in a lot of these, though, because Luke Fickell, I think his stock kind of somehow plummeted after he took the Wisconsin job, because you backtrack before that, he was the guy everybody was hoping to get. Like, yeah, he took Cincinnati, he took a G5 school to the college football playoff. Yeah, I don't know. When they play Bama, we'll see how good they are, but I don't know. Their schedule didn't line up enough for me to think they could get in. All right, here we go. Noah, Michigan, Suckies. I'm assuming that's the Buckeyes. Michigan, Suckies, Penn State, and Oregon. It's coming from Noah. Same 4 there. Again, James says Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. Again, same 4. All right, here we go. Greg says USC and Iowa are on the bubble. My dark horse pick would be Rutgers, whose schedule lines up pretty well, in my opinion. All right, Greg, there we go. Rutgers getting some love. Now, again, I'm not even a Rutgers fan, but when you really look at it all, like that schedule, as well as what they have coming back, it's reasonable. Obviously, some more than other need a perfect storm, but in my opinion, number 1, Ohio State, 2, Oregon, 3, that's Michigan, that team up north, 4, Penn State University, and 5, Wisconsin, 6, USC. Wisconsin, all right. I might have missed one, but again, some need everything to go perfect. So yeah, I'm with you there with those 6 and 5 in particular. Now, those first 4, I think they can afford a loss. But 5 and 6, yeah, they're going to have to only drop one game to, somebody above them. That's coming from GW. All right, Drew, here we go. Rutgers getting some more love. Rutgers is the crazy sleeper. They don't play any of the top 4 projected Big Ten teams and have the vast majority of last year's team back. So, yeah, that's kind of what I was touching on. They returned some key pieces from last year. That was solid. Like I said, they handled Virginia Tech, which was a pretty good team, which is getting a lot of ACC buzz this season. And they avoid the top 5 teams in the Big Ten, in my opinion. Because, again, they don't play Iowa either. And you have the Big Ten leading rusher coming back. You've improved some through the portal. Rutgers is a team to watch out for, man. Sean, I think we get at least 3 in. All right, I agree with that for sure, at least 3. Ohio State and Oregon, either Penn State or the Cheaters. All right, that's coming from Sean. He's talking about Michigan here. So, yeah, I think those 2, as we've established, are the teams that are in for sure. I think Penn State's in for sure as well. And then the rest is out. CLF says Ohio State and Oregon for sure. If the chips fall right, Penn State, and that's Michigan. Those cheaters up north. All right, really only 4 that come to mind. Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. That's coming from A. Big says not Penn State, even with the 12-team playoff. I believe they'll miss the cut. They have a better chance now, though. So, yeah, I agree they definitely have a better chance now with playoff expansion. But I do disagree on that, though, because I think they will get in. But a lot of people saying they think they'll miss the cut, so maybe y'all are on to something. Hudson says Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and maybe Hicks again. So I'm assuming he left out the M. Or there's just got to be some Ohio State fans sending these in. So, yeah, the same 4 suspects for sure. Mike, usual suspects, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, plus Oregon if they can adjust to Big Ten style of play. My best guess anyway. So, yeah, like a couple people have touched on here, like I think Oregon is super talented this year. Definitely has the potential to make the playoff, but how can they adjust to, like he says, Big Ten style of play? Can they take that big boy football week in and week out? And Jack says not Michigan. So, a lot of Michigan kind of mixed on, love and hate at the same time. All right, but yeah, I was surprised to see Wisconsin and USC get that much mention. But looking at this, guys, all right, so that is the end of your guys' comments. Responses are courtesy of Bleacher Report, Twitter, email, comments, and Discord. You can contact me at any of these listed here. Email me, shoot me a DM on Twitter, comment on the community, comment on my post in Bleacher Report, or join the Discord. My link is on the channel bio. All right, I think that is about it, guys. But those are my Big Ten teams that can make the college football playoff, as well as your guys' teams that you think can make the college football playoff. Who was not mentioned here that you think could be in the conversation? Who are, in general, the Big Ten teams that you think can make the college football playoff? Let me know. If you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But comment down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe.